Hey, it's me, Rob Ryan. We're back. Welcome back to Entrepreneurial Thinkers. If you wear clothes, consume clothes, or ever think about consuming clothes for your family, for your kids, if you're a parent, or if you're ever just conscious of how many things we buy from the Amazons or the Temus or the Shines of the world in our kind of disposable, throwaway, cheap, fast, doesn't even necessarily have to be quality world that we live in, this is the episode you want to listen to. We spent a great visit with Lauren Gregor, who's the CEO of Rent-a-Romper here in Los Angeles. She's been a friend for a few years, and to have the chance to give her the platform to talk about not just Rent-a-Romper, but also just kind of her broader views about consumption, about circular consumption and the circular fashion industry. And some of the data and the statistics that she shared with us were mind-blowing. Like literally, do you know that we throw away, we dispose of 3 billion pounds, maybe it was million pounds, you'll have to listen to find out, of clothes, of children's clothes every year. Insane numbers of wasted spending in a world where we're all trying to figure out how to make a living and stretch our bucks, wasted energy in the production and mass production of all these things, so wasted energy, wasted water, environmentally not conscious, and then just waste, right? All those Amazon boxes that we get. So if you're interested in any of these topics or any of these topics touch you, or you just want to hear another inspiring story about a young woman who's converted her passions for operations, planning, and strategy and solving a real life problem in her own household first, and now solving it for thousands and thousands of families across the country, this is the episode you're going to want to enjoy. Hope you enjoy it as much as we did making it for you. Hola, hello, hi, bienvenido, and welcome back, or welcome to Entrepreneurial Thinkers. Today, I am really grateful to be joined by Lauren Gregor from here in LA, and to have the opportunity to share her passion for solving real life problems in how we consume clothing in our lives. But first, let me tell you a little bit more about her. Lauren is the dynamic founder and CEO of Rent-a-Romper. She's a deeply experienced operational leader in the educational and transportation industries, who I've had the personal pleasure of getting to know a little bit over these last 3 years. It's always been really enjoyable for me to see what I call kind of her creative grit and her determination in building her business while also living the never-ending, demanding life of being a full-on present mom and partner on a daily basis. So Lauren's story is one of those classical entrepreneurial stories of solving her own problem first. Faced with the constant waste of kids' clothing in her own home, Lauren created Rent-a-Romper to simplify life for parents and champion greater sustainability. Through that, she is revolutionizing how we dress our kids one rental at a time. But when she's not busy leading a Rent-a-Romper, she spends a lot of time outdoors. She loves to play volleyball. She loves to read, hang out with her husband and her 2 boys. And today we're going to get into her story, but we're also going to lean on her experiences to kind of reinforce what selfishly I believe is really important to us in society nowadays, which is how we can apply entrepreneurial thinking to solve both big and small everyday problems that we face all across society. So welcome to Entrepreneurial Thinkers, Lauren. It's great to see you.
Thank you so much. Excited to be here.
Thank you. And I have a question for you right out of the gate. Admittedly, in doing my research to prepare for the show, I found out more about you than I didn't know. I had kind of a narrow view of you. I knew you were a busy mom. I knew you were a committed partner, but I really thought of you just as Lauren Rent-a-Romper person, right? And I went back and I find that you've had really kind of a fascinating, extensive career, which I want you to tell us more about later, kind of how we got here. But my first question is just, if I would have met you 10 years ago in LA somewhere, when you were the policy development advisor for the LA Unified School District, which for those that don't know, is the second largest public school district in the country, would you ever seen yourself as an entrepreneur?
Back then, roaming the halls of Beaudry, building downtown LA, absolutely not. I had grown up, like always with the parents, I would say, like, have a salary and benefits and don't leave for the next job, but your job until you have the next job. So I always was in the mindset of, I will just be here and like, I will move careers, I'll move around, move in organizations, but never thought that I would be venturing out on my own.
So it didn't have any context, didn't have any examples. There was no like, my uncle was a super successful business person. And so it was kind of none of that kind of context in your life.
No, I mean, my parents actually are architects, both of them, and they ran their own architecture firm when I was growing up.
Okay.
But even then, I didn't really think about it as like I knew I didn't want to be an architect.
Yeah.
So
I was going to say, you didn't think about it as like the
it.
architecture business. Like they were just
No, I didn't think about
architects.
it that way. It was just
Yeah.
like, I know I don't want to be an architect.
That's fascinating. All right. So I told you before we got into the show that I was going to cheat and ask you kind of one bonus question just because of the depth of experience that you have. And you're a mom. And we just talked briefly before we got on air, like, you know, it's the end of the school year. You got kids with graduations and promotions and all the things that go into that, which I haven't had to deal with for like 15 years now since she got out of high school. But I want to take advantage of the fact that I have someone who's so hugely experienced in policy and in administration in the educational world, not just here in LA, but in general, to ask you to share some of your perspective about how we could inject more kind of entrepreneurial thinking into our educational systems or our educational culture. And again, I get it. That's a huge ask, but I don't want to miss the chance to have you share your perspectives.
Yeah. So just a little background. I started my career out of college as a teacher. Actually, I taught in New York City.
Teach for America, I saw.
Teach
awesome
for America.
Program.
Yeah, I taught in the Bronx. And I think, like, I've always loved working with kids. And I think there's so many issues that society we can deal with and need to deal with and rethink. And I felt like education and being in a community and getting to know that community was like a great place to start and just learn. And then I ended up working in education for 15 years. Everything from being in the classroom and at a school site to, like you said, like working at the district level for LA Unified. And then I've also worked for a charter school organization. So like a smaller organization based in South LA, 15 schools, 7 to 15 schools. And I think that being an entrepreneurial thinker, like there's so many nuances and levels which we can make change. And I think being in education, wherever you are, is an industry where we have done everything the same way for so long.
Right.
And I think it's just a nature of like questioning and saying, could we do this differently? Like, why do we have to start school at this time of day?
Wow, that's a great one. That's a great one.
Like, all of these things are the way it has been for so many years. And I think, interestingly, I was still working at a charter school organization in COVID when I started Rent-a-Romper.
Okay.
And I think that was one of the times where the educational system was like forced to move fast.
Right.
We had to figure out new operational policies at a school to keep kids safe. We had to figure out overnight how to get kids online very quickly and get technology in their hands. And by nature of like no other choice, change happened and happened quickly. And I think sometimes like we need to fabricate those scenarios to like make stuff happen, or just give people the chance to say like, it's okay to ask, why have we always done it this way? Or what if?
I'm curious. You bring up this idea of kind of what happened in reaction to COVID. Have we just reverted back now since then and just kind of like dismissed that as like some weird, 1,000-year exception? And so obviously that's not going to happen again. So we could just go back or has some of that stuff kind of persevered and stuck?
It's interesting because now I haven't been in that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but as a parent, as an operator,
right, as a parent, I think some of it has stayed. Like, this is a really specific example, but like, why do you have to go into the school for teacher parent conferences? Especially if your parent works full time,
because
or has multiple jobs.
Because you didn't during the pandemic. Like, you could do it like Zoom.
You do it on Zoom,
right?
And so I think there's some things like that when I was teaching, I mean, this is a while ago, but like you have really low attendance because it's hard for parents to attend.
Yeah. Interesting.
Why don't you call them? Why don't you have a Zoom meeting? So I think there are some things like that where all of a sudden, like attendance for those kinds of things is up. And let's keep doing it that way. So I think there are certain things that have stuck. And I think at the time I worked for a charter school organization, so it's more agile than a big district where you're trying to do it for 700 schools or whatever it is. Where, like, okay, we're going to make this change and we're going to do it. We can make that decision today and have it happen tomorrow. Whereas, not to get into the deep politics of school boards, but like sometimes you can't.
Right.
You that process has to take a much longer time period. But I think like what you're asking basically is we need to like question.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's a fundamental thing, right? That the ability to question kind of the status quo, and then a curiosity maybe that goes alongside that. And what you're saying is you have unique experience and insight from being inside. I'm actually, that's a fascinating, and we're going to get off this and get into the Rent-a-Romper story, but like, that's fascinating that you lived in both the second biggest school district in the world or in the country, and then a charter school environment as well. I was reading something the other day in another state in the deep South, like charter schools, there's been such a push, and I'm not saying one is bad. I think they're both good, frankly, comparatively, and to benefit each other. But like, there's so much of a push to this, and like private schools, that literally like the public school system is going to collapse, right? And I'm like, that then just runs kind of antithetical to the whole way that we set the country up to like have free education for everybody, right? That was accessible. And so we're at an interesting period for innovation. But throughout all this, like, you clearly are a problem solver, right? Like, that was as I read back through all your information, and obviously I've known you for a bit, so I watch you, and just like, you are just a problem solver. Like, the through line of you is like, I can think strategically, I can think tactically, and I can plan out like, how do we do what is wrong? How do we fix it? And how do we try and do it? But try at least to do it better, right? And at some point, tell this story now, please. Like, you go from, I'm working at a charter school and I'm starting Rent-a-Romper kind of on the side, to what's going on today. So let's get into that.
Yeah. Well, that is like, I am a problem solver, and I am a very action driven person. I don't like if a problem is there, I don't like to not do anything about it. I have to move and I have to act. So my boys now, they're older, but at the time they were young, like 2 and 4, and they were going through clothes day after day. And I hate shopping. I'm a founder of a rental clothing company, but I don't like shopping. And I was doing it all the time because I would buy them clothes, and then the next week they grew out of it. Wow. And I was so frustrated, and I wanted something that was convenient. So I started shopping online, and they would come in 17 packages, and they would still grow out of it the next week, So there just wasn't anything that I could find that was affordable, that was convenient for me as a working mom, and didn't make me feel more guilty about my contribution to the waste in our house. Right. And so it was one of these things that I just kept thinking about all the time. And interestingly, at the time that I started really thinking about this the most, I was working for that transportation company, First Group, which is a like global transport provider, and they do buses and trains and all the things. But at the time I was working for the head of IT, and looking specifically at how to innovate within that industry. Okay. And so we were trying to figure out ways to help our vehicles have better on-time on-time service, or better ways for customers to board the bus faster. And so being surrounded by this question of like, how do we do it better? How do we do it faster? How do we make it more convenient for the customer was like my day-to-day job every day. And I was with that seeing startups that would be pitching to this big global company to say like, let's work with you. Let's get a contract with you. We're going to test out this new technology we have. And so every day I was meeting people that were innovating and we're building something new.
And you'd come home at the end of the night and you'd be like, there are those like 17 folded up Amazon boxes that I have to take out to the trash now. And that just seems like it's not good for the environment. And then they're crap. I know that my 4-year-old's going to outgrow that by next Wednesday. And then
so it
just kind of
happened to like mix at the moment of day to day being faced with like, there's these people out there in the world called entrepreneurs, innovators, whatever, solving problems. And like, yet I come home every day and I have this problem that is nagging me over and over and over. So I decided to do something about it. And at the time, I started becoming more and more interested in this and how do I solve it? And I think I actually listened to a podcast at one point that was the question of the theme was like, basically, why not now? Like, why not you? And why not now?
There you go. You're like, I'm hooked.
Okay. I guess it is me. I'll do it. No one else is going to do it. I'll do it. So, and that's, I think, like that action part too, where once I decided, I couldn't stop.
Yeah.
So I literally made a business card on like a Microsoft Word or something.
Oh, wow.
And printed it out, made an email.
Okay.
And went to a conference, a women's conference, as the founder of Rent-a-Romper, but like no Instagram, no website, no anything, nothing.
Right. Literally, I mean, as idea stage as idea stage could possibly be.
And I just pretended that that's what it was. And it was that day, then everybody said, you know, all the people that I met, I would buy this today.
Wow.
Do you have a website? Do you have this?
Okay.
If you had that when my kids were little,
right,
I would sign up today. Or like, where can I go get it? And so that night I came home.
So product market fit was yelling right back at you.
And that night I came home and I built our Instagram, or like I created Instagram.
Wow. Okay. What was the first iteration? And then I want you to tell us, you know, we'll do the commercial. What is Rent-a-Romper exactly? And you, kind of the pitch, and you can tell us how it works and different products and services, all that. But like, what was the first iteration of it?
So
either for yourself or you were like, okay, let me just I'm going to try and be the first customer, or for someone else.
I had this idea as a mom myself of like, why can't someone else just do the shopping, right? And then send me what I need, and then it goes away when I'm done.
Yeah.
So that was the iteration. It was a curated box. So I know for my kid, I need shorts and t-shirts. I don't just need one t-shirt. I need multiple things. And I need it to come to my house, and I need it to go away afterwards.
Yeah.
When they grow out of it.
I don't want to have all those boxes.
Yeah.
I don't want to have
when they grow out of it next week, because otherwise it's going to be sitting in your car or in your closet or wherever for years until you figure it out.
Question for you. So I was the end of the line of my family, so I was essentially kind of like an only kid when I was little.
Yeah.
And then I only had my daughter, so like I only know one kid life. But for a lot of folks, the part of the solutions or answers to this normal life quandary is like, oh, I get stuff from my sister or brother's kids handed down to me, and then I turn around and hand it down to them. Yeah. But it doesn't sound like that was an option in your family life. And
I mean, some people do, and that is wonderful if people have access to that. Yeah. I have two boys that are exactly 2 years apart, and not a single thing fit my second child.
Okay,
like
there you go.
One, we live in a different climate than we did when they were, whatever.
Yeah.
And they're different kids. Kids are different. So like, we might have the occasional shirt that would fit, but none of the pants fit. Or I would even open a box and realize like, oh, I open it up and there's not a single pajama in here.
Right.
Like, and that's what
You're
I
like,
need.
that's what I really
so
need.
It's imperfect, right? It is great to have if you have access to that. And I think the other thing is a lot of people don't have that. Like they talk about that village you need to raise your kids.
Right.
A lot of people don't have that around them.
I would probably most.
Yeah.
The example I just gave is maybe more mythological than it is real. Yeah. Right. And when it does, it's the kindness of others, and then that becomes a burden. And there's a whole other layer of like, my sister feels like she's taking care of us because she gives me all the clothes, and I don't want that feeling with my sister. And
right.
Yeah. So there's a whole bunch of baggage. All right. Yeah. So give us the commercial. Tell us what Rent-a-Romper is, how it works, how people get involved, etc.
Yeah. So Rent-a-Romper is a rental clothing membership for babies and toddlers. We go from size preemie to size 5 when kids are growing through sizes rapidly. So in the first 2 years of life, kids grow through typically 7 sizes of clothing. That's a lot of shopping.
Hold on. Let's go back. In the first 2 years, they go through 7 sizes.
7 sizes. And that's on average. If you have a bigger kid, they might even go through 10. So that's a lot of shopping. It's a lot of money. And purely by the fact that they are children and they're growing, they're only going to wear it for a short period of time. So that's really what we're trying to solve, is save parents the time and money and hassle of just shopping constantly. And, let's focus on reuse and have less of a burden on the planet. So we have monthly memberships is how it works. So you subscribe and pay a monthly membership fee for a set number of items, which we curate for your child. And then our parents are able to have the flexibility to swap the clothes anytime they need. So if the baby grows out next week, you can change your clothes out. If they're fitting well or the season's changing, it's up to the parents to really have that flexibility, because kids are unexpected. They don't grow on
they don't grow in a linear fashion.
It's not linear.
Right?
It's not
it's very unpredictable, right?
Unpredictable, that's the word.
All right. So the back end of this is, you said, like, not only do I want it to just show, I don't want to shop, I want it to show up to my house. but I want it gone when it's not useful to me anymore, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if I'm the parent and I've subscribed, I'm a member, and I'm getting these like regular shipments of stuff that I need. But then when Junior outgrows the stuff, like 4 months later, or a year later, or something like that, I give it back to you.
Yes. So we're completely circular. So every box that goes out to a customer includes a prepaid shipping label. So when they receive their next clothing for the next size or the next season, then they can put anything that they've outgrown or is too small back in the box to send it back to us. We clean,
Okay.
sanitize, and then keep on the life cycle of those clothes.
Wow. Like, just a logistics question I've never thought about in your business before, even though I've known you for a while. Like where, like, you have a warehouse with all these these clothes?
We clean, everything is washed. The good thing about children's clothing, like, we don't necessarily need to be dry cleaning facilities, but we
Right.
are able to wash. And then, everything comes back in, gets checked in and inspected and restocked essentially before it goes out to another customer.
Okay, so a couple snapshot questions here. So from when we started, like, it was you, and then one day there was a first customer who was like another you,
Yeah.
right? To today, like, where are we at? And I don't, however metrically you want to present this, I don't care. Like, I'm just fascinated with like the volume of clothes, the number of people that are doing this, how often they turn stuff back in. I'm fascinated by all the numbers.
Yeah. We'll get ready for the metrics. So we started like thinking about me with one shelf of clothing that I had, my kids' hand-me-downs essentially.
Yeah.
We now have 40,000 items in our inventory.
Wow.
And we, on average, our customers are swapping every 6 weeks is about how it typically averages out.
Okay.
Typically when they're really small, they're growing faster. And then, when they're bigger, it slows down. But so we've done 5,000 shipments.
Holy
now
cow.
That's an actual box full of clothing. So on average, 10 items going out and back and out and back. And we're all over the country, nationwide. So we have customers that have stayed with us 3 years plus. So they've started with their first baby with us.
That's incredible.
Now they have a second child that has a subscription. And so they're just sticking around and waiting until they grow out.
Right.
And
I mean, why wouldn't you?
Haven't bought clothes.
Right.
That's the coolest part.
Like, I mean, like, why would
why?
Once you're hooked, why wouldn't you stay in that? And like, I mean, that to me seems like you've helped. I mean, it's good for the business, obviously, but it's good for them in the sense that you've helped them develop a habit, like a new consumer / parenting habit, that if it's working, it's working. Right.
Yeah. I think that is exciting because they're not buying new. They just rely on us, and they get an occasional gift from grandma or whoever.
Yeah.
But like the way that they consume is totally different than without Rent-a-Romper.
No, of course. Super big picture above Rent-a-Romper. I'm sure you probably know some of this data that I would be shocked by, but like, just in general, in clothing, and maybe if you want to start, like, talk kids clothing because that's your sweet spot.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how much do we waste? Either how much do we waste? Like, how much do we waste?
1.5 million tons, which is 3 billion pounds approximately, of children's textile waste annually in the US.
Every year, just in the US.
Just kids' clothes.
Oh my goodness.
Just in the US.
This is massive.
It's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, that's just kids' clothes, and just in the US, 3 billion pounds of just stuff that we're just disposing of,
throwing away. Yeah. And what's interesting too is like sometimes we take clothes from our community. So if people want to give us their kids' used clothing, the number of times that we get bags with tags still on it.
Oh wow.
Like, these aren't always clothes that have had even one
right. I was gonna say,
they're clothes that have never been worn that are being thrown away. I mean,
sometimes they might be like might be grandma's gift that they didn't really like, right?
Right. I mean, that's possible.
Right here, we'll just give it to them.
It is possible. But often it's like, and in my own experience as a mom, sometimes you like have a drawer of clothes that you're waiting to have the kid grow into. Right. You forgot it was there, and by the time you open the drawer, the kid already grew out of that size.
Right. That makes sense.
So that happens, and I know that happens often.
I'm sure you know some of this, and any data that's proprietary you don't have to share, but like, comparatively to I've done this pre-Rent-a-Romper era, like all of time up until Rent-a-Romper, right? Where I went and I shopped. I was you basically. I just went and shopped constantly, and I was always going to Target and buying from Amazon or Shine or Temu or whoever it is now, right? And like getting stuff shipped to my house. We'll get to that later, by the way. I planted that one on purpose. But do we have some numbers on how much the Rent-a-Romper user saves annually now versus how they would have consumed previously?
Yeah. So, I mean, we've done this based on, like how many items of clothing a family would typically have to purchase every year. And if they're growing through this number of sizes and you need this number of clothes to be able to, dress your child. And so you think about that. Like if I was buying everything I needed for my child, even if it was new or if it was secondhand, the amount of clothing that we can service that same population with is over 80% fewer items.
Okay.
So because we're circulating every time an item's coming in, it's going to the next family, coming in, going to the next family. An item is being in use and not on someone's shelf in a garage or wherever. The items are in use much longer and more often. And so we're able to actually serve more families with fewer clothes.
Wow.
And it's 80% less.
Significant.
So that's, if they're not going and purchasing all those new items, you can think about the savings not only in extending the life of the clothing. Right. So we're getting on average 6 to 8 uses. Families using an item, which you think even if you have hand-me-downs, like it's going to get twice, 3, maybe 4 times. Right.
So you're extending that life cycle.
That life cycle, which is saving water, energy, right. Blah, 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 all of those things also. But then we're reducing the amount that the families that use our service are consuming, period, which is also massive reduction.
It just seems like, and you'll probably laugh at this, right? Because you're like, this is what I'm telling people every day, Rob. Like, it just seems like this is both so obvious as well as like, oh my God, why wouldn't everybody do this? Kind of a solution for layers of previously thought to be like complex, unfixable problems. Right. I mean, you're chipping away at like climate and environmental problems. You're chipping away at energy usage problems. You're chipping away at financial ability to stretch your dollar, kind of economic problems. You're chipping away at just like familial issue. I get it. You're not supposed to try and be all things to all people, and you're not. But the level of from this relatively simple but genius idea, right, of just essentially, as you would say, what we were talking about education, like kind of just thinking like, wait a minute, is there a different way to do this? Or couldn't I try to do this differently? Like you've not only solved like 1 or 2 or 3 core problems, but you seem to be really addressing a lot of other issues.
Yeah.
This is the part where you're like, yeah, Rob, that's core, what I say every day. Yeah.
I am. No. I mean, at our core, for like a specific mom or family, we're saving them time. We're saving them money. Yep. And they know they're reducing their consumption. Yeah. Like pure end of day, that's what we're doing. And it's an obvious choice for families. But I think when you think about that larger picture, like you see sometimes stats about the fashion industry and that there's already enough clothes in our planet for the next 6 generations, I think is the stat.
That's insane.
And there are so many clothes out there.
Yeah.
And the purest way of like reducing consumption is just reusing things.
Yeah.
Not buying new things.
Right.
Like just reuse it as much as you possibly can.
Yeah.
And it's not that hard of a thing to do. Right. But in the way that it has been for a consumer is like, if I was a parent and I want to reuse, I want secondhand. Either I have to get hand-me-downs up at my kid. I have to search Facebook Marketplace, right. Or
and then you're into the whole like
all the time.
Do I trust this person with their clothes? Right?
Yeah. And even just like I need the things that I need. I'm gonna have to scroll and get it from 5 different people and spend all this time and energy doing it. Like the solutions that we need to make, I believe, have to be convenient and affordable, because then people are not going to adopt them if they're not.
Right. So that actually raises a good question. When you have over the years, a few years now, right? Like when you have met resistance, when you hit that consumer objection before they try it the first time or the second time, and then they're like, "Oh my God, I can't believe I didn't do this." What are those objections? Are they just like trepidation over it's different? I've never thought this way before.
I think that industry in fashion is changing really fast. Secondhand retail is like up 10x over traditional retail in the last 2 years. So I
Okay.
think consumer mindset is changing and there's more awareness. Like there, even in women's rental has picked up a lot over the last 3 years. So more of the consumer we talk to has rented for themselves
Okay.
versus when we started. When we started, it was like, I don't understand how it works. Is it going to be clean?
Yeah.
How am I going to get it back? Like just all those kinds of not understanding the model.
Yeah.
We don't get that much anymore. Now it's more about style. Like they want to know that
Okay.
we're going to pick stuff that they like. They want to know that there's going to be, that it's going to be quality. So it's concerns that like a real customer
Right.
that is expecting anything that they purchase.
Those are good problems to have.
Yeah. And, they want it to be easy. So, I mean, that's something that's a constant evolution. Like we're building a brand new thing from scratch.
Right. So, I think you hit on it, and it was a subtle point, but I think it maybe is a big one, right? No matter what, like, yeah, we want to be more conscious. We want to be more environmentally conscious. We want to be better. But no matter what, like societally, I don't care. Younger generation, Gen Alpha, Gen Z, like everybody is still indoctrinated with like, I want it fast. I want it cheap. I want it on my terms. And I don't
like it still has to work.
Yeah, I was gonna say like, and I don't know that we're gonna get away from that, even though we probably should,
right.
But I don't know that we're gonna get away from that in our lifetimes, right?
Yeah.
But if you can adapt this circular reuse mentality into that and say, I'm still gonna make it affordable, I'm still gonna make it convenient, I'm still gonna give you the quality selection that you would demand from your website that you would go type into and get all these boxes shipped to you. That's probably the powerful hook that makes it expand. That's fascinating. I mean, you know me, like anytime I see now anybody in my Instagram followers or friends that has like had a baby, I'm like, have you checked out, like you're super environmentally conscious. And I know you are because you literally run like an environmental film production company. You should check out this for your baby's clothes. Right. And the women are always like, wow, I never.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, I appreciate
it. Yeah, because I think about like I remember. So my daughter's 30, right? So high school age, like even back then, like so 15 years ago, she was going to like what was the place? Buffalo Exchange. I'll never forget. Yeah, like that was and thrifting, and even my niece, my now 16-year-old niece that I was with this last couple of weeks, she got her driver's license the other day and like went out for her first drive by herself, right? And what did she do? She went to Starbucks and then she went thrifting. Yep. And she came back and she was like showing us the cute outfit that she got and the shorts and the t-shirt and the whatever. And her mom was like, wait, where did you get that? Like, you didn't go to Target? And she was like, no, Mom, Target. Like, come on. Like, why? Yeah, why would I spend my little bit of money that I have for my allowance at Target, right? Where I could get so much more. So that feeds to your, like what you're experiencing in the business. Obviously you're a huge believer in just this circular model. In the example of but I sense from your answers like you're a huge believer in this more widely applicable, right? So I teased it before, right? We do live in this kind of Amazon, Temu, which I didn't even know what Temu was until like 3-4 months ago, or Shine, which I know what that is, right? Like we live in that world where we just want fast, cheap. It appears to it looks quality, but it probably isn't quality. But we don't care because it's cheap and it's fast and it's available and we can get a new one when we want to. Like, is the circular fashion model kind of the answer to that? Is it the counterpoint to this world where we just consume and dispose of everything?
I believe that we need mass adoption of more sustainable practices, even if they're at a smaller scale. So I think, the more of us that are changing habits versus one person changing a really large habit, is going to have more of an impact. Yeah. And I feel like circularity and just reuse in general is an easy thing to do. I mean, yes, like you don't have to necessarily build an entire new company and rental model to do it, but like, okay, I just have a towel that isn't really working for us anymore, but actually like I could use it for some rags, let me just keep it for 6 more months, another year. That was
my mom did for my entire,
throwing it in the trash.
My entire childhood was with just the reused rag that was like, that was my baby blanket or something, right?
Yeah. And there's more and more, like I think it's really interesting, more and more people almost going back like in time to what you were just saying. Like there is another purpose that I can use this for. And let me remake it into something cool. Let me remake it into something new. Yeah. And there's companies we work with on the tail end of our clothes that are doing really interesting stuff with it. And there's still value out of these items. And I think it's going to take a network. Like, it's not just us. We need recyclers, we need upcyclers, we need people that are actual artists that are remaking things, that are doing stuff. But I think it is that, like, we need sustainability to be accessible for people, so it's easy to make a choice. And there's things out there where, you know, they're really expensive. Like, you buy Temu or Shein because it's $5 and you can get it really fast, but it's not going to last. But if you want to buy a sweater that is quality, you know, it's going to cost you $80. And I think a lot of times that is, number one, we're still creating something new. So the resource that we have to do, even to make something in a sustainable way, is still resource that we're taking versus repurposing something. So I think there is a better, best, great, whatever. Like, there's probably tiers of these solutions, but I think it takes all of us. And I think the circularity piece is really about mindset of, let me extend, let me reuse. You know, there's resources that already exist, and how do I use that before I create a new resource?
I'm with you. I think, and I hate to assign like everything about saving us as a society and as a species to Gen Z or millennials or everybody younger than me, but like, I think they might, right? Because to your point, I think we're in a transitional era. Like, I feel this in a bunch of different ways in our business, in our politics, in our lives, right? I think we're in between, and we won't know until 30 years from now at the end of my life when we look back and go like, oh, turns out, the 2020s was like this big transition between this way and this way, right? But I do feel that. I feel like, and this is, again, great for your business long term, right? Is I feel like we're transitioning into a more circular, model conscious society in a number of different ways, because ultimately I think we're coming head on against the fact that we have like depleted our resources or are depleting them at such a pace that, you know, like, wow, things might run out, or this isn't sustainable. And even where we're still kind of running into the storm, going, we're at least now saying like, this is not going to work. Like, I can't keep running into the storm, but I'll run in this time. But like, I know I can't keep. Whereas, you know, my generation and prior, we're like, there's no storm. This is just going to be up and to the right for the rest of mankind. Like, we win forever. This is great. And especially in the US, right? Like post World War II, we're like, we won. It's over. Like, it's our way or the highway. And now we're waking up to the fact that that's just not practical. Like, that's not, it literally isn't going to, can't happen. So that's exciting for you. I'm curious. Let's tap back into your like long-term planner, strategic thinker mind for a second. Go way out into the future with me. Basically, the end of my life. Let's go 25 years from now, 2050, right? Like, what is our clothing production and consumption, and not the like what you would like it to look like, but like, what do you practically think? What kind of progress do you practically think we will have made, both from a production and a consumption standpoint, 25 years from now?
Well, I hope that the trend of secondhand and resale continues, because that is, like you're saying, it's a massive shift. It's not just like, oh, it's growing 2x. It's growing 10x year over year right now.
Those are big numbers.
And like you're saying, the teenagers, the Gen Zers are going secondhand first. Like, there's things that are trending on TikTok right now are about the thrift hauls they get, and not, I mean, there are things about Shein hauls,
of course,
Amazon, my Amazon finds, but I think more and more
it's not only that anymore.
Thrift.
Yeah, it's not only the unboxing of the Shein thing now, it's also my thrift haul.
Yeah, and the thrift is trending at sometimes higher than those, you know? So I think right now, if we can continue, and there are people that are continuing to innovate in the space, like ThreadUp, like Resale as a Service, these different sites that are being able to, you know, encourage brands to do things in the resale space, it's going to continue in that way. And then, you know, like, but we need all of these people, because at the bottom, we need people to upcycle and recycle those items back into new. So my hope is that we continue, like, in the next 10 years, to see those businesses get created, the models built, the technology built, you know, the actual physical manufacturing or warehousing solutions so that we can be in a place where we're not, you don't have, maybe we don't have 6 generations of clothing in our, like maybe you have enough for 3 generations.
Right.
And the waste that we're diverting is much bigger than what we're able to today. Because I think today we are seeing innovators in terms of like the recycling space and reuse, but they need to scale as well.
Yeah.
So, that's my hope, is that all of these ideas that are coming out now and this transition that's happening just continues to build, and more smart people think about new solutions to remake and to reuse. And then, we see a really different level of consumption and more affordability of like these reused items.
Yeah. No, I would agree.
50 years? You got 50 years.
I won't be here. You will be. I won't be here, but I'll be proudly watching down. I'll be like, this is great. Yeah, somewhere out there's a policy advisor to like the New York City school district right now who 10 years from now, we hope they're innovating in their own ways in these spaces, right? Because they couldn't have imagined being an entrepreneur.
Let's do it.
Right. So couple things that are also required, and this is the last question of this main section, then we'll get to our closing, but couple things that are also, this is me just making a statement before I ask you the question, right? So to support what she just said, listeners, whomever you may be, investors, by the way, particularly, right? Like we need to continue to facilitate the ability of these innovators and these businesses to finance themselves, right? To finance their dreams, to finance their now circular inventories, right? So bankers and financiers and venture investors, y'all need to like get out of your own way so that we can build more of these types of solutions, because these are the solutions that your kids and your grandkids and your grandkids' kids are basically going to be operating under. And won't it be nice for you to be able to say like, yeah, I remember when we backed that company that did that, or those companies that were doing that. So let's not forget that that's required too, right? It can't just all be new entrepreneurs and new ideas funneling into the top. We've got to support that system so that they can thrive, not just survive, which Lauren has done an incredible job of both thriving based on the numbers and impact that you share, and obviously just surviving as an entrepreneur, which is part of the whole win of being an entrepreneur every day, is simply just getting up and still being an entrepreneur tomorrow, right? And you managed to do that. And one of the ways I think,
hey, we're here.
This is the last question, is I'd love you to talk about this a little bit because I know it's important to you. One of the ways I think you have found your way through the survival moments and thrived is, like, I know at least here in Los Angeles, like I see you're very actively involved in the community, right? And so as both a mom, right, but as a founder, it seems like community is critical to you. Like you've cultivated your own group of people, your tribe that support you through these things. So I'm curious if you want to talk a little bit about how important that is to you as an entrepreneur. Also, is there a community aspect of the consumer experience inside of Rent-a-Romper for members?
Yeah. Well, I think that community is huge for me. Like, number one, I'm a solo founder. So I'm here talking to myself about my ideas and criticizing myself about my ideas. So I think right from the get-go, community has been so important. And also I'm building in a space that, like, it is core to my problem I'm solving for myself, but it's a space that I don't come from. Like, I come from strategy and operations. Yes. Technology. Yes. But retail, no.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you think about that as an entrepreneur, like the people that can see the problem in a different way, maybe they need to come from outside of that industry. Like, so I know that I need help, and I know that I need people around me that are going to continue to fuel me in this journey, because it's hard. It's really hard. And so I've tried to do that like pretty purposefully here in LA, especially just being a part of that community and knowing that like there's people I can call on to say, hey, this is really hard today. Like, keep going,
Good for you.
So that has been super helpful. And I think it's also like a driver of why I'm doing this, in the sense of like, I don't know, I played volleyball. I love like an underdog story. I love when people tell me like, this is really complicated business. Why would you do this? Or like, and that's just to me like, well, and now I'm going to do it because you said that it's impossible, right?
Yeah.
And women founders, and it's all of these things are like incredibly hard, but I love being part of this community where I see all these people making incredible ideas come to life. And like, I want to be part of this community forever. So I want this to be successful so that I can then reinvest it in others.
That's terrific.
And so that's really like an important part to me, and just like how I hold like my why for doing this.
No,
but then for the business, I mean, it's a shared closet. Like,
I was going to say, it's like the ultimate community, right? Yeah.
It's the ultimate community. And I think one of our favorite things that we've been able to see, and it's happened completely organically, is we take clothes from our community, give them credit towards their membership, and we'll have somebody on social media, comment on someone else's outfit that they're wearing, saying like, oh, that was in the clothes that I just donated. Or like people saying that was one of my favorite outfits that so-and-so wore for her birthday, and then posting their photos. Like, they are connecting amongst themselves. And just by the nature of like, I know that these clothes are going to go on to someone else.
That's powerful.
Which is amazing. Even for like the kids, we talk about like changing behavior in kids from day one, where they are from day one wearing secondhand clothing and reusing clothing, is pretty incredible. We have customers who like they'll send us notes, or where their daughter, this one in particular a couple weeks ago, was telling me that her daughter's now like, well, mommy, that doesn't fit me anymore. We should send it to Rent-a-Romper so someone else can wear it.
It's like, awesome.
Kids they're going to do it, right?
There's the hook on like how you change the future thinking, right? Is because you've just ingrained a new, instead of mom, let's go to Target, right? Or mom, can I get on and order new stuff from Amazon? Right? You've got this little girl is like, wait a minute, like we could, like, why aren't we doing that?
Yeah.
Like, aren't we doing what we always do? That's terrific.
Yeah.
Good for you. That's incredible. Beautiful story. Last segment, last question. I'd like to try and make it actionable. So I'd like to try and leave people with a couple things. There's a couple different ways I could go with this. This is just going to be my preference. I think you get asked all the time probably about like, what's it like to be a woman founder? How hard is it? How do you feel? Like, so I'm not going to do that. Like, I'm not like, I'm going to get, I want you to just, let's go dive down deeper into what we've been talking about in how the circular model and how this little person story that you just told, like, can kind of become more true for more families. So it's a little bit of a commercial for Rent-a-Romper, but it's also just practical advice. So what would be 2 or 3 practical steps that any parents could take today to begin to reduce clothing waste in their homes? And you can sound like it's a commercial. It's okay.
Well, first you should rent your clothes from Rent-a-Romper.
There we go. That's okay to say. Somebody's got to say it. Might as well be you.
Well, I think it is a really great way to do it, because then you don't have to shop and you can get exactly what you need, and you can know that it's getting another life after that.
Yeah.
And if you don't rent from us, you can send us your clothing that the kids have outgrown, because what we will guarantee is that we're going to extend the life as long as we possibly can.
Okay.
If it's in that quality and that condition. And if we don't, it gets diverted from landfill with all of our partners that we have. So that's another way you can think about it. But I think one of the ways that has been the most impactful for me with my own kids, and the ways that we talk a lot with our customers about it, is just being really open and talking with your kids about how we use things and how we try to be sustainable. And like that little girl story, like, they're listening, they're paying attention. And now my boys will all the time think about, okay, well, this sweater doesn't fit me, but I know Ryan will like it. Or I know my nephew Ellis is going to like it. Like, they're already thinking about who the next person is.
Incredible.
And we don't drive stuff around in the car anymore, figuring out where to donate or where to do. Like, they're already thinking about the next life of that piece of clothing.
Yeah.
And similar coming to them of like, whose clothes they think are cool that are bigger than them that they can wear next.
That's pretty neat.
So I think just like having those conversations, like talking about it with your kids, in a way that is friendly for them is
those are
huge.
I mean, that's great business advice. Point number 1, rent from Rent-a-Romper, become a member. Point number 2, general societal advice, like, hey, if you don't rent from us, that's okay. Like, we'd love you to, but that's okay. But hey, by the way, instead of just randomly donating to XYZ thing down the street or dropping it in some Dropbox where honestly you really don't know what happens to it, like, here we promise you, our commitment to you is we're gonna get it as far a life cycle as it can. And then point number 3, just great parenting advice, right? Like, just talk to your kids about the living life a better way. teach your little kids to become entrepreneurial thinkers before they know that's what they're becoming. Right.
Yeah.
That's terrific. This was such a joy. This was so fun to have. Like, we've talked business, we've talked like what's going on, how are things going, how's the fun. We've done all that over the course of our friendship online and when we see each other in person. But to have you give so generously of your time for 50 minutes and not just talk to yourself in your room, but talk to me for a while about everything that is in your mind, was really special. So I really, really appreciate it. How can people find and or sign up for Rent-a-Romper, and how can people find or follow you on your journey on social?
So find us on rentaromper.com and on Instagram and on TikTok at Rent-a-Romper. And then you can find me on LinkedIn, Lauren Gregor, or Instagram as well, Lauren Gregor.
Awesome. Thanks, Supermom and Super CEO of Rent-a-Romper.
Thank you, Rob.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode as much as I did recording it. As always, we thank you so much for listening and watching. Today's show was recorded here in Los Angeles and produced by the incomparable Deanna Bernal in Mexico City. You know, we can only grow this show by you listening and sharing the show with friends. So please find, like, follow, subscribe, and share our audio-only show on Spotify, Apple, or via any other popular podcasting platforms, as well as find the video version of our show now available on our YouTube channel over at Entrepreneurial Thinkers. And of course, you can follow along on our various social media platforms for fun and informative clips and content at Entrepreneurial Thinkers, wherever you can find us. And if you'd like to connect with me, you can find me at I Am Rob Ryan on just about any social media platform. Gracias, thank you, and have an awesome day.